Some people supported the revolution, they were called patriots. Others stayed loyal to Britain, they were called loyalists. Families and friends were divided, even neighbors began to argue and mistrust each other. In 1776, the tension exploded. That summer, a man named George Washington, the commander of the Continental Army, brought his soldiers to New York. They were ready to defend the city against the powerful British Army. Washington knew New York was the key to the colonies. Whoever controlled New York controlled the main route between the northern and southern states. But the British were strong. They had more men, more ships, and better weapons. In August 1776, one of the biggest battles of the entire American Revolution took place, the Battle of Long Island, also called the Battle of Brooklyn. It was fierce, and sadly, Washington's army lost. Imagine the scene. Smoke, cannon fire, shouting soldiers, the smell of gunpowder in the air. Washington's men fought bravely, but they were surrounded. Then, one dark night, Washington made a brave decision. He led his army across the East River quietly, in small boats escaping the British forces. It was one of the most daring moves in military history. If he had been caught, the revolution might have ended right there. The British took control of New York City and held it for the rest of the war. For 7 long years, New York became the main British headquarters in America. Red-coated British soldiers filled the streets. The harbor was full of British ships. The American flag was gone, and the Union Jack flew over the city. Life during those years was hard. Food was expensive, and there were spies everywhere. Many buildings were damaged or destroyed. Then came one of the darkest nights in New York's early history, the Great Fire of 1776. Flames swept through Lower Manhattan, destroying nearly a third of the city. Some said American rebels started it, others blamed accident or chaos. Whatever the cause, hundreds of homes were gone. The city was left blackened and broken. But Chapter 4: The Immigrant City. The 1800s were a new beginning not only for New York but for millions of people around the world. The city that once began as a small Dutch trading post had now become the gateway to America. And through that gate came a wave of people unlike anything the world had ever seen. Every single day, ships crossed the Atlantic Ocean, carrying families from Ireland, Italy, Germany, Poland, Russia, China, and many other countries. These people weren't rich. Most of them didn't even speak English. They carried only small suitcases, some bread, and a big dream to find work, freedom, and a better life. Imagine this scene. You're standing on the deck of a ship after 2 or 3 weeks at sea. You are tired, hungry, and scared, but suddenly someone shouts, "Look, there she is!" You look up and see a tall, shining figure, the Statue of Liberty. Her torch is raised high, her face calm and kind. For many immigrants, this was their first glimpse of America. For them, that statue was not just made of metal, it was made of hope. After the ships passed the statue, they reached Ellis Island, the first stop for nearly 12 million immigrants between 1892 and 1954. Ellis Island was a small island in New York Harbor, just near the Statue of Liberty. It was a place of both joy and fear. Immigrants stood in long lines to be inspected by doctors and officers. They were checked for illnesses, asked questions about their jobs, and sometimes given new names that were easier for Americans to pronounce. Some people cried tears of happiness when they were allowed to enter the country. Others cried because they were sent back to their homeland. But for most, this was the first day of a new life, a life that would be hard, but full of possibility. When these immigrants entered New York City, they found a place full of noise, color, and movement. Horses pulled carts through crowded streets. Street vendors shouted to sell bread, fruit, and fish. Children played barefoot in the alleys. Buildings were tall, but rooms were small. Sometimes 10 people lived in a single apartment. Yet no one gave up. Everyone worked. The Irish worked on building bridges, roads, and railroads. Many of them had escaped the Great Famine in Ireland. They had lost everything back home. But here they found jobs and community. The Italians brought their food and culture: pizza, pasta, and music that filled the city streets. The Germans opened bakeries and breweries. The Jewish immigrants built shops, schools, and theaters. The Chinese worked on railroads and opened laundries. Chapter 5: Rise of the Modern City. As the 20th century dawned, New York City was no longer just a busy port or an immigrant hub, it was becoming the beating heart of modern America. The skyline began to stretch higher and higher. And for the first time in human history, people looked up to see where their city was growing. This was the era when steel and elevators changed everything, and the world would never be the same again. The story of the modern city began with innovation. Engineers discovered how to make steel stronger, lighter, and cheaper. At the same time, the invention of the elevator made it possible for people to live and work dozens of stories above the ground. Together, these two inventions gave birth to something the world had never seen before: the skyscraper. The first wave of skyscrapers rose in Lower Manhattan. Buildings like the Flatiron Building, 1902, amazed everyone with their height and bold triangular shape. Soon came giants like the Woolworth Building, proudly called the Cathedral of Commerce, because of its breathtaking design and size. Then, by the 1932nd, the Empire State Building climbed even higher into the clouds, a symbol of what humans could achieve when they dared to dream big. But skyscrapers weren't the only marvels of this new age. The Brooklyn Bridge, completed in 1883, had already connected Manhattan to Brooklyn, but in the early 1900s, it became a powerful symbol of progress, a link between the old and the new, between tradition and innovation. Families would walk across the bridge, gazing at the city's lights and feeling that anything was possible. And standing tall in the harbor was the Statue of Liberty, the same statue that greeted millions of immigrants. Now, she wasn't just a welcome sign, she had become a global icon of freedom, democracy, and the American dream. For both newcomers and lifelong New Yorkers, her raised torch represented light in the darkest times. As the years passed, New York began to define what modern life meant. Wall Street grew into the center of world finance. The city's banks, stock exchanges, and offices became symbols of power and ambition. Businessmen in suits rushed through crowded streets, carrying briefcases filled with dreams of success. Uptown, Fifth Avenue blossomed with department stores, fashion houses, and elegant hotels, a place where style met success. Meanwhile, art and culture were exploding. The Harlem Renaissance brought African-American music, poetry, and creativity to the forefront. Jazz clubs echoed through Harlem's night streets, introducing the world to legends like Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington. Broadway lit up with music and laughter, while Times Square, once just an intersection, transformed into a glowing heart of entertainment. The first electric billboards lit up the square, turning night into day. For people visiting New York, it felt like stepping into the future. But not everything was bright and shining. Beneath the glow of the city lights, there were shadows too. In 1929, the Wall Street crash hit like an earthquake. The Great Depression that followed brought hunger, joblessness, and despair. Men who once wore suits now stood in bread lines, waiting for food. Families lost their homes. Children sold newspapers to help their parents survive. Yet, even in those dark years, the people of New York refused to give up. One of the most powerful images of that time was construction workers eating lunch while sitting on a steel beam hundreds of feet above the city, building the Empire State Building in the middle of the Depression. That photo became a symbol of courage and determination. It said, "We will rise no matter what." Slowly, the city began to recover. Government programs created jobs. New buildings went up again and hope returned. By the late 1932s, New York stood stronger than ever. It wasn't just a city anymore, it was a living symbol of resilience. As the 20th century marched forward, New York became known as the capital of the modern world. From Wall Street's money to Broadway's lights, from Harlem's music to the art of the new skyscrapers, everything about the city said progress. It represented what human beings could do when they worked together and refused to quit. The spike moments of this chapter, the birth of the first skyline, the dazzling lights of Times Square, the rise and fall of Wall Street, and the determination of those who built even when hungry capture the true soul of New York. This was not just a city of stone and steel. It was a city built on hope, hardship, and human strength. Through invention and imagination, triumph and tragedy, New York had become the blueprint for the modern world, a place where dreams were tested, but never destroyed. Chapter 6: The City That Never Sleeps. The story of New York now arrives in the age we know, a time of bright lights, roaring traffic, endless music, and unstoppable motion. From sunrise to sunset and far into the night, the city glows. It hums. It never truly rests. This is modern New York, the city of dreams, energy, and resilience, the city that never sleeps. As the 20th century moved forward, New York became more than just a city. It became a symbol of the modern. As the 20th century moved forward, New York became more than just a city. It became a symbol of the modern world. Its streets pulsed with ambition. Its skyline became a monument to human imagination. Every building, every neighborhood told a story of survival, creativity, and change. Let's rewind for a moment. The early 20th century had already brought skyscrapers and jazz, but the Roaring '20s transformed New York into the heartbeat of American culture. Jazz echoed through Harlem's clubs, flappers danced in smoky bars, and the idea of nightlife itself was reinvented. The city's lights, especially in Times Square, became brighter and more alive than ever. Newspapers and radios spread news instantly, and for the first time, people around the world began to look at New York as a dream destination. But the good times didn't last forever. The Great Depression and later World War II tested the city's strength again. Factories shifted to war production, women entered the workforce, and ration lines appeared in neighborhoods that once celebrated abundance. Yet, even during the darkest hours, New Yorkers found reasons to carry on, to sing, to build, and to believe. After the war, something incredible happened. New York began to rise once again, stronger, bolder, and more diverse than ever. The 1,950 seconds and 60 seconds brought a new wave of immigrants, artists, and thinkers. The city became a stage for civil rights, music revolutions, and cultural awakenings. The Beat Generation read poetry in coffee houses. The birth of rock and roll and later hip-hop took place right here in the Bronx. And Broadway, the heart of American theater, glittered with new musicals that inspired millions. In these decades, New York became what it is now famous for, a city of creativity and opportunity. People came here to chase dreams, whether in art, business, or fame. Wall Street boomed once again, and Central Park became a green refuge for everyone who needed a break from the city's noise. Taxi horns, jazz notes, laughter, and ambition blended together into the soundtrack of a restless city. But no story of New York is complete without its trials, and one of the darkest came on the 11th of September, 2001. That morning changed everything. Two planes struck the World Trade Center, and the Twin Towers, once the pride of the skyline, collapsed before the world's eyes. Thousands of lives were lost. The city was filled with smoke, fear, and grief. For the first time in generations, New York stood silent. And yet, out of that silence came something powerful: unity. The people of New York did what they had always done. They came together. Firefighters, police officers, nurses, volunteers, everyone stood side by side, helping, comforting, rebuilding. Vigils filled parks. Flags hung from every window. And slowly, painfully, the city began to heal. The rebuilding of Ground Zero became a symbol of resilience. The new One World Trade Center, rising higher than any other building in the Western Hemisphere, was not just an office tower, it was a declaration. We are still here. The 9/11 Memorial became a place of remembrance and peace, surrounded by the very city that refused to break. As the years passed, New York entered the digital age. Technology companies opened offices in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Startups flourished. The city's creative scene expanded online, with YouTubers, filmmakers, and musicians turning street corners into global stages. The subway system, the art galleries, the street vendors all became part of an interconnected world that pulsed 24/7. The phrase, "the city that never sleeps," has never been more true. At 2 a.m., you can still find lights glowing in apartment windows, taxis racing down avenues, food carts steaming with late-night snacks, and artists sketching under street lamps. Every hour, someone somewhere in New York is dreaming, working, performing, or falling in love. New York's energy doesn't just come from its buildings or money, it comes from its people. From the immigrant families who still arrive with hope in their eyes, to the Wall Street analysts watching global markets, to the street performers in Central Park making strangers smile. Each one adds a spark to the city's endless rhythm. Today, walking through Times Square feels like standing in the middle of the world. Massive digital billboards flash in every direction. People from every nation cross paths, and the air itself feels electric. Around you are the voices of 1,000 languages, the sound of laughter, the beat of music, all blending into a living symphony that never ends. The spike moments of this chapter, the roaring jazz age, the rise after 9/11, the explosion of art, and the eternal hum of Times Square all capture one truth. New York is unstoppable. Through tragedy and triumph, through darkness and light, it has always found a way to keep moving. It doesn't sleep because it doesn't want to, because every moment in this city holds a new possibility. From Wall Street to Broadway, from Central Park to Brooklyn streets, New York stands as a living, breathing miracle proof that no matter what happens, human spirit never stops shining. And that's why, even now, as the lights reflect off the Hudson River and the night stretches on, the city whispers to the world. Welcome to New York, the city that never sleeps, after Chapter 6. If you enjoyed this incredible journey from a quiet forest to the city that never sleeps, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below. I'd love to hear from you which part of New York's story inspired or surprised you the most. Was it the arrival of the Dutch, the fight for freedom, or the way immigrants built their dreams here brick by brick? Your comments help this community grow and help more learners like you discover the beauty of history and of English. And don't go anywhere. In the next video, we'll explore how people from all around the world, Italians, Irish, Chinese, Africans, and many more, shape the language, food, and culture of New York City. You'll see how their stories built not only a city, but also a voice that speaks to the whole world. So stay curious, keep learning, and remember, every story you hear brings you one step closer to mastering English. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next journey through time.